The O'Malley administration and the Maryland Department of the Environment demonstrated in 2009 their failure to robustly preserve, protect, and restore the Severn River. In the case of Sullivan Cove and the proposed 600-foot piers, the governor turned his back on many concerned citizens and organizations that lobbied him to take this case to the Public Board of Works, where it could get a fair hearing. He stood silently and failed to act while yielding to private interests and ignoring the interests of the citizens of the state of Maryland. The result is the construction of massive bridges across public wetlands and tidal marshes so that property owners could then build docks into Sullivan Cove. The larger bridge that you see from this aerial view connecting the twin docks is over 400 feet long and 6 feet wide. The docks then project into Sullivan Cove over 200 feet. Where in the state of Maryland do you see private piers on this scale? Perhaps piers of this size would be acceptable in the Port of Baltimore, but certainly not on the state-designated scenic Severn River. Why would the Department of the Environment be so willing to issue permits that can potentially destroy some of the last pristine tidal marshes on the Severn River, especially when the Sullivan Cove tidal marsh was identified in 2006 by the Maryland Department of the Environment as an area for protection and preservation? Sullivan Cove is one of the last remaining tidal marshes on the Severn River. Until these bridges and docks were built, it remained unspoiled and largely untouched by man. This tidal pond is an important and even critical nursery and sanctuary for countless species of water life and birds. Now it's burdened by massive pilings cut into the bog and wide walkways shading the plant and aquatic life. The cove contains a giant and fragile bog that cleans water going into Sullivan Cove in the Severn River. A damaged bog could release toxic chemicals into the river that are held in suspension by a healthy ecosystem. Why would the MDE take such a risk in granting permits? The bog in Sullivan Cove is a home to a limited number of Atlantic white cedars and hundreds of seedlings. This is a tree that is rare on the western shore of Maryland. Again, why would the governor and MDE ignore and endanger this fragile natural resource? Some experts feel that the environmental damage to this bog will come in future years, as the pilings increase the sedimentation and lower the water levels in the tidal marshes and cause irreparable damage. Unfortunately, Governor O'Malley and Sherry Wilson, Secretary of the Maryland Department of the Environment, through their inaction, stood silently on the sidelines while decisions were made that will affect the Severn River for generations. In a press release on March 5, 2009, the Maryland Department of the Environment wrote that they required changes to the original proposal to include the requiring the two homeowners to share a pier. In the original application, the two walkways over the marshes were to be 3 feet wide. The MDE bragged about forcing the homeowners to share a pier, yet the pier ended up to be 6 feet wide and not 3 feet wide. So much for sound MDE stewardship. Round Bay and the Severn River seem to be a wonderful demonstration project of the state's inability to provide meaningful protection for our environment. Generations of Marylanders who will want to use our rivers and bays may be robbed of clean, fishable, and swimmable water. It seems that private interests continue to win out over public interests, and environmentally insensitive construction continues. Our political leaders simply passed the buck to the federal government for cleanup and showed little regard or concern for their responsibility for the environmental protection of our rivers and bay. As we travel by boat on Round Bay, it's routine to see the horrors of development, really bad development, such as the hardening of the shoreline with tons of rock instead of a living shoreline. We see homes on steep slopes with tons of concrete positioned to keep their property from sliding into the river. We see homes where the owners ignorantly cut down the trees to get a better view, only to see massive erosion. When will it stop? When will the state government take seriously the protection of our rivers and streams? When will our citizens who occupy land in the critical area and the Chesapeake Bay watershed understand that they are in large part a contributor to the water quality problems in Round Bay and the Severn River? I urge you to contact the Governor, the Secretary of the Maryland Department of the Environment, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and your Maryland legislator, and express your outrage that the state is not acting as a responsible steward for the environmental protection of our rivers and bays. Let them know that in the future, massive piers like those built in Sullivan Cove over pristine tidal marshes should be prohibited. To address concerns, MDE has indicated they will convene a task force comprised of stakeholders to review Maryland's laws, regulations, and policies related to residential pier construction to determine whether they should be revised. This task force is to complete its work in time for the 2010 General Assembly.